They say that we have some apathy, but I can't see it. We have people that are continuing to come in, and I definitely feel if we had a larger venue that we'd still fill it up. But before we get started, we'd like everybody to check their phones. Put them on vibrate, please. I know you checked it before you came, but try it again, just in case. But we have an exciting event set tonight, and we want to get this thing off and running on the right track. Welcome to your candidates forum for the 6th Congressional District. Right now, we want to stand and have our pledge of allegiance to the flag. Thank you. You can be seated. We're very excited to have the candidates here tonight to express their views and to give you an opportunity to ask them questions that we know are very important to you, and also is very important to the people that are looking in via television, Facebook, and we are streaming live. I would like to thank the South County Democratic Club and the chair, Mr. Jess Minks, for putting this forum together. Everybody give him a round of applause. This is a lot of work. My name is Doug Freeman. I'm the second vice chair. We hope to have a spirited, civil discussion for 2 hours. Any lit or any paraphernalia, we would appreciate it if you would put it into the room on the right. I think everybody has adhered to those rules. Thank you. We're asking the campaign manager to assure that we don't pass out any lit until after the event. Also, we want to hold the applause to our 3-minute break. So let the candidates express themselves without any applause to interrupt, because we're on a time-sensitive schedule, and we'd like to get as many questions asked and answered as possible. Now I will hand this event over to our moderator for tonight's event, the candidate for the 78th District, Michigan House of Representatives, my friend, Dean Hill.
Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for the round of applause. Thank you for showing up tonight. It's really a huge crowd. We're happy to have you here. A couple things that are going on. There is a thing that looks like a traffic light in the back there. It is going to be the timer for the candidates. They will get a question. They will get 90 seconds to answer. It will be green for 60 seconds, and then the amber color for 30 seconds. And then the red light will show. So candidates, we're okay with that? All right. We will start off with the candidates introducing themselves. And we do have 7, so they get 2 minutes to talk about their platform and some of their ideas. So Aida Gray is the first to start.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Hi, my name is Aida Gray.
Stand up, please. Oh. No, it's going to be hard to stand up. It's going to be hard to Well, if you can hold it, stand.
I took care of all the technical issues for you. You're welcome. My name is Aida Gray. I am new to the area for about 4 years. I am from the east side of the state, namely Detroit City proper. So I've known a lot about what can happen when the educational system is left under the auspices of a private charter schools. It's not a good system. I also want to try and, where my experience comes from helping veterans. I worked at the VA, and I want to help improve those systems. Also for the current issues that are going on as far as gun rights. I'm going to say this right now. I do and do not believe in banning assault weapons. I do moving forward. If you have a weapon already, or I know they have a little age between 18 and 21. I've known a couple 2-year Army vets that were 20. So if we're going to be talking about that, let's also discuss some cutouts that are possible for people that have already served in the armed services. That's just coming from a personal view of being a veteran. I think they've earned the right to carry a weapon. When I was going through some things when I got back from the service, I did go, I like to go to a training range. I took out an AR-15, and it's therapeutic for some veterans. So I just wanted to bring that out in the open, let you know how I felt about the subject. And I hope we have a lively discussion today. I look forward to talking to you guys after and listening to the fellow candidates speak. Thank you. House District, Michigan
House
6,
District.
the same as the rest of these candidates.
All the candidates for the 6th district. Trying to upseat up to. Matt Longjohn is next.
All right, I'll see if the tech works for me. Great. Thanks, y'all, for coming out. I really appreciate seeing so many of you here. Just a quick introduction. You know me, I hope many of you by now. I'm a guy with 160 years of family history here. I'm a doctor, an organizer, a health innovator, one of the top 100 healthcare innovators in the country according to the Obama White House. And I'm running for Congress to improve the health and quality of life of everyone in this district. I'm excited about tonight because we're kind of past the point of doing all the introduction stuff. From here on out, the job is yours to focus on electability. Electability is the issue of the day. We have to resist President Trump's unfair, unethical, uninformed, and unhinged policies. And the way to do that is to beat Congressman Upton in November. So we need to put our best foot forward, our most electable candidate forward. That means we need to have a candidate who has a record of success and a record of resistance. My career, over 20 years on gun injury prevention, children's health issues, public health, etc., is something that's actually proven unassailable by President Trump and Congressman Upton in their efforts to repeal the Affordable Care Act. My program that I helped create and spread around the country, that's created tens of thousands of jobs, saved lives, saved billions of dollars, has withstood their attempts to repeal it. I know what it takes to have a successful record and to resist this agenda. If we're going to put our most competitive and electable candidate forward, we need to be able to provide a sharp contrast, someone who can go toe-to-toe with Fred every day between now and November. And I'm unencumbered by personal history of writing checks to Fred Upton or to other Republicans in this district. I can run on my record and be unafraid to provide that contrast with Fred. I think that if you look at how this election is going to go, we have to also make sure that we have the resources needed to beat Fred. And at this point in the race, I've raised more money without any debt than any candidate here. In November, we must win. We have to have an electable candidate. I believe I can win, and I hope to earn your support tonight and between now and the primary. Thank you.
Hello, my name is David Bedak. Thank you all for coming out. It's good to see a lot of you. I've seen many of these faces before. We've been going all across the district, building the grassroots movement that it's going to take if we're going to win this race. At this point, we've knocked on, I think the number lately is 15,000, 16,000 doors. We've held live in-person town halls over the district. We've got our 17th one coming up in Kalamazoo. I encourage anybody to come out. The one after that is going to be back down here in Niles, so I hope to see a lot of you again when we do that. What this race means to me: I'm an elected union rep, I'm a teacher, and I'm someone who believes that the Democratic Party needs to be the party that can't be bought. What has happened in the past? I worked on the Senator Sanders campaign, and I was one of 3 people from the state of Michigan he chose to represent him at the Democratic National Platform Committee. And what we fought there was the type of progressive reforms that we've seen are wildly popular all across the country. And those reforms are popular here as well. I believe that universal access to affordable health care is not enough. We need Medicare for all, a single-payer, universal system that covers every single person in this country with no exceptions. We need to have real economic advantages created for the American people by creating an educational system that leaves no one behind, by removing the tuition barrier that prevents people from getting the type of education they need so that they can advance and become someone who has a good career. Those are the kind of reforms we need. We can create those things. And when it comes to winning this election, what we know it's going to take is that we have to get past the idea of having auctions and get back to the idea of having elections. We need people who can mobilize support across the district, mobilize volunteers, mobilize energy, get people to the polls in numbers we've never seen in the past. We can do that, but we have to stand for something that gets people excited. And that's why I'm running for this seat. Thank you.
Rich, if you'd rather sit, that's fine.
We seem to have started this.
All right.
Anyway, thanks to Jess and thanks to all of you for coming out. I'm Rich Eicholtz. I am a scientist with 30 years of retire Fred Upton after 32 years. I'm also running to restore fact-based thinking in Washington, which, as a scientist, I think is critical. In the 32 years that Fred Upton has been our congressman, economic growth in Southwest Michigan has gone from 2%, which doesn't sound great, but it's not bad, all the way down to 0%, literally zero. Meanwhile, we've been missing out on the fastest growing segment of the jobs market. Jobs related to the production and utilization of clean, renewable energy are outpacing every other type of job across the Midwest, all through Michigan, just with one exception, Southwest Michigan, where our congressman and the chair of Energy and Commerce resides. I believe that we can get our economy growing again and revitalize our inner city and rural communities by expanding opportunities for what I call clean jobs, good paying, rewarding jobs. As your congressman, I will be working hard every day to build a 21st century economy that works for everyone, protects the planet, and provides for universal health care. I ask for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, fellow Democrats. What a great turnout. Thank you for being here and thank you for having us. My name is George Franklin and I'm a candidate for Congress and I will win in November. I did not just parachute into this district. I have a record of accomplishing in all sorts of areas. I've been involved, I've been participating, and I have a record of accomplishment to run on. I, like a lot of you, the morning after the last election, woke up and said, good God, what has happened? And then our nightmare became true. This administration took the reins of power and began to attack. It was relentless and it was coordinated. They attacked healthcare. They attacked education. They attacked the environment. They attacked the labor movement. They went after agriculture. They went after the LGBT community. And they even wanted to defund Planned Parenthood. As I said before, I've been involved and active, and I said to myself, I cannot stand on the sidelines and watch this happen. What people in this district want is a fair shot. And you are not going to get a fair shot with this Trump administration and an enabling Congress that is allowing to happen. I believe in democratic values. I've been involved in the Democratic Party since I was in college. I was a progressive before they called it a progressive. And I believe we need universal health care. We need a clean environment. And we need to fight for our ag community whose wages are now less than half they what were 5 years ago. You need to find someone that can win this. You need to find someone that can address the issues, because this is not about the 7 of us. This is about flipping 24 seats. Thank you.
My name is Paul Clements. We have an economy that's working for the rich, but that's not working for most of us. And I'm running to fix that. Like in our district, the average wage People working longer for less money than 20 years ago. Most of us believe, rightly, that our children might not do as well as our generation has done. And the reason for this, the main reason, is because of money in politics that's given us a government that's rigged and that does not address the fundamental concerns of most of our citizens. And Fred Upton is a prime example of this problem. So the first thing I'm running for is to get the big money, the dirty money out of politics so we can clean up the system. Then how do we build an economy that works for all of us? We first repeal the tax scam the Republicans just put in place at the end of last year and clean up the loopholes out of our tax system. Then we have a living wage for working families. We get cheaper and better health care for everybody with an expanded Medicare for All program. We provide education that actually prepares our children to succeed in the 21st century. We move 1 million people from incarceration into productive jobs, back into the community, back into the family. We have a forward-looking economic policy where we invest in renewable energy, in agriculture so America can continue to feed the world, a $1 trillion infrastructure program that will bring back many good-paying jobs to our communities. And at this time, we need to restore values to government, which is just basic truthfulness and respect for everybody, and a positive vision for the future. And if we do these things, then I know that America can be the beacon of democracy for the 21st century as we have been in the past. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Eponine Garrett. Let me get this out of the way. I am 24 years old. People ask me if I'm 18, if I'm 35, 24. I was the first candidate to announce back in May of 2017, right on May 1st, and I've been campaigning hard for almost a year now. I am committed, super committed. I was committed even before the election. I knew that I needed to get involved in some way, shape, or form. So who am I? I'm an activist first and a politician second. I'll tell you that much. I am out on the streets with every group organizing around this area, putting my body on the line for the things that I say that I stand for. I'm the only candidate up here who was willing to go to MSU to protest Richard Spencer. I submitted public comment to the FCC when they were trying to repeal net neutrality. These are things. I helped organize the arrest of 7 of my friends to stand up for DACA in Kalamazoo. These are things that I will bring to Congress as well. And I'm here to retire the word congressman. I think it's time to have a congressperson in this district. You've seen the energy of youth across our nation, especially recently. But where is our representation? Where's our representation? I'm here to run not just to represent my generation, but to represent the people of this district, which are working class people, which Fred Upton would not have you believe. He's here to represent the millionaires and the billionaires and the corporate special interests, but not those of us who day in and day out are going to work to barely make enough to get by for a living. I have a lot more I'd like to say, but I see my yellow light on. If you're talking about who Fred is afraid of, he did try to have me arrested already for standing on his steps at the Women's March in St. Joe. So you can tell he's a little bit afraid of me. But I'm here to not represent Fred Upton, but to represent all of you. I look forward to hearing your questions, and I will not be taking any dark money from my campaign. It's all grassroots funded, and we do have donation envelopes in the back. Thank you.
Okay, we got the first one down. Everybody can kind of like, rest a little. Okay, it's always good to get the first one out of the way. All right, first question. The way I understand, as the candidates came in, they had to pick a number out of the little bowl or barrel, whatever we had. And this was how it went. So Ada has number 1, so she'll get the first question here in just a moment. And then we'll just continue through until we get to 7 and work it that way. Each get 90 seconds to respond. And same thing with the lights. It'll be 60 seconds for green and then 30 for the caution. All right, here's the first question. What, as the 6th district representative, will you propose to improve the economy for your constituents?
If we're talking about the economy, we have to talk about education and training for the new jobs that we have. The new manufacturing jobs that are coming along. The robotics that has to be trained for. We also have to talk about the tariffs that are going to be coming in, that are going to affect our trading partners. We trade with Brazil. Brazil is our #4 partner for the state of Michigan. Now, Brazil is very upset about the tariffs because they order in coal to make the raw steel that they then ship back to us. So we're going to be paying what's going on with the whole economic policy. I was upset when the taxes went through and you know, Fred Upton, he's not just an elected official, he's my elected official. So I went and I looked him up. He's not going to be affected by the tax policies that he voted yes on. He is worth $16 million. The average median income for this district is $47,000. And I just want to have a little pregnant pause there and understand that I'm sure most of us here are not worth $16 million. I'm going to stand by all of my Dems here and say that we're going to stop that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Matt?
So the biggest parts of our economy here, and even nationally, right, 20% roughly of our GDP now goes to healthcare. And in this district, 22% of our economy is agricultural, so let's just kind of start there. In terms of healthcare, you know, when we look at the cost of medications, we look at the cost of healthcare, neither the Affordable Care Act nor any of the terrible ideas put forward last year in the Republican health care plans would actually have reduced cost or managed the cost of health care. If we can't get the cost of health care under control, whether it's in international trade agreements or whether it's in local economies, we are handicapped. We are walking around with 20% of our economy kind of tied behind our back, unable to negotiate for better workers' rights, better livable wages, etc. So we have to unlock the value of communities in healthcare. That's what I showed could be done. The first person in the history of the United States to be certified by the chief actuary at Medicare for creating jobs that save lives and save billions of dollars. Agricultural policy here is also a big part of it. When we talk about ag policy here, we need to make sure that we're keeping that independent farmer in mind. Corn subsidies, soy subsidies, corn and soy prices have been going through the floor over the last 3 years. At the same time, the cost of healthcare and education has been going up, so those farmers are being squeezed. We need to diversify our subsidies program, give ourselves a chance to move away from big ag and get more into local food system production, make healthier choices, easier choices. Last but not least, we need to make sure that whether it's international trade or in our support of the labor movement, that we always recognize the rights and the voices of workers. I would not support fast-track authority for trade deals. I think that works against workers, and we need to empower international unions to get things done to fight for the values of small businesses and working families.
Thank you. David?
I would start with healthcare. Medicare for all. We start that and we take the biggest burden off of our economy. Right now, every other industrialized nation on the earth provides medical care for their workers. We're forcing our employers to bear that burden. Just the big three automakers alone spend $7 billion per year on healthcare. Think about how many of our jobs are going to come back here if we take that burden off of employers. Think of what we could do for small businesses if you can hire someone and not have to worry about paying the healthcare costs. Yet at the same time, we're not reducing the ability of people to afford healthcare. I start with healthcare. It's going to bring 2.6 million new jobs to this country if we go to Medicare for all. This is the place where we start, we'll fix the economy, we're going to get things going. The next place that we go is workers' rights. Let's look at real protections for our unions. Let's get back to the protections we had in place before the Taft-Hartley Act started gutting our unions. What we can do is let's look at this strengthened unions is going to be our solution to automation. We'll come back to that with another question, but that's the only answer we have because we cannot resist against automation. We've been automating as human beings ever since we had a brain. That's what humans do. Let's learn to work with it and make sure that those new good jobs fit within what we're going to do to provide good jobs to our workers.
Thank you. Rich?
So when I think about the economy, the first thing that comes back to me is my undergraduate honors economics course. It was a seminar, and the one thing that we learned out of the whole year was that economies need balance. We have a consumer-based economy, so what does balance mean in this case? It means that we have to have a balance between profits and wages. We need profits because you have to be able to incentivize people to start businesses, and you have to be able to invest money afterwards. But because we have a consumer-based economy, we also need wages. So what we've done over the last 5 decades is to continually push money away from wages over to profits. So for the district, the biggest thing that any of us could do is to try to dig out from this hole that Trump has put us in with this tax scam. It didn't work for Reagan, and the Democrats dug us out. It didn't work for Bush, and the Democrats dug us out. And now Trump has dug another hole, and we're going to have to dig out from that. Beyond that, obviously, as I've said before, I think clean jobs are really the springboard that will get the economy moving here again, revitalize our economy and then our community, by creating jobs that are where people want to live, rather than having to drive to, no offense, somebody I know is from South Bend, but to South Bend. Thank you.
The first thing we need to do is re-examine our priorities in our national budget. In 2019, the defense budget is going to be $716 billion. The Defense Department's internal working group in 2015 admitted that there was about $125 to $150 billion of savings that could be had within the Defense Department budget. We need to reevaluate our priorities, redirect our resources to more productive uses in districts like the 6th Congressional District. The other thing, as far as the farmers, the most immediate thing we do is fix the grain glitch. And you probably know what the grain glitch is, but it's disrupting the entire logistical supply system in the farm community because it's an indication of how poorly this tax bill was written. It induces farmers, it gives them a 20% gross deduction if they sell to a co-op that is not available if they sell another place. The Farm Bureau and everyone is asking us to fix the grain glitch. And finally, on a more direct way, we need to refund the Economic Development Administration of the Commerce Department, which is an essential tool in generating economic activity in local communities, and it's been stripped bare and is no longer functional.
Paul? Our economy has been for a long time, for 30 years, working for the 1%, but not for the majority of us. So getting the money out of politics is a critical step. But then also to turn it around, having a living wage for working people by raising the minimum wage and the earned income tax credit, and strengthening our unions, because unions are the one that brought us the 40-hour week. But if we want to have a strong economy for all of us, we've got to fix the basics. My colleagues have already talked about how our health care, well, we pay twice as much as Canada per person, and our health is not as good. With a single payer, we can have a cheaper health care. It's going to be better for our economy, better for our health. We need to bring our education system into the 21st century so our kids get the education that they need. This is critical for our future economy. We know excellent preschool pays for itself. We need to give our teachers, not testing the kids to death in K through 12, but rather providing teachers with the knowledge of the best practices and supports to adopt those practices. I'm going to move now to incarceration because I don't want to fix this in my last 30 seconds. When we have 2.3 million Americans behind bars, costing us $35,000 plus per year, and not in the community, it's hurting all of us. It is racist to start with, but it's also economically inefficient. We will not lose any safety by moving 1 million people from incarceration back into the community, into jobs, through a variety of means I'm happy to talk about, and that will help our economy as well. And if I still have any time, we need a forward-looking economic policy, yes, with renewable energy, yes, with agriculture, yes, with technology of jobs for the future, not coal. Thank you very much. Each one of us should be able to walk into a clinic and get our basic health needs, dental needs, vision, hearing covered for free. And if we have all of our health needs covered, for the most part for free, we can actually do it and lower the cost of health care for the country by a substantial margin. Why is that? Because our health care has been designed for profiteering, and so where the administrative cost for the insurance and for the overhead is 30 cents on the dollar compared to 4 cents on the dollar for Medicare and Medicaid. So we take away that administrative cost, we cover everything, and then we change it from focusing on fixing disease to focusing on good health. So mental health, so issues like obesity, substance abuse, are treated first and foremost in our public health system, and that way we can avoid many people moving into our hospital system. We empower people when they move out of hospitals to take better care of themselves. We can have cheaper and better health care for everybody, taking a public health perspective, moving towards universal care, whether it's single payer, something like single Medicare for all would be one good way to do it. And then, as we've said before, I want to re-emphasize that for our economy to be paying twice as much as other countries for less good health is bad for our health, but it's bad for our business. And so this is something where we have to hang it on Fred Upton's neck, that he has been an enemy of healthcare reform, that the Upton Amendment was going to kick 38,000 people off health insurance this last May.
Well, your time is up.
Thank you.
So I'm a chemist and I work in quality and pharmaceuticals right now, so healthcare is something I'm very familiar with and actively work with. There's several things that we can do to impact healthcare directly here in the 6th District. I am in support of Medicare for all or any single payer option. However, we know that that's the golden goose and we gotta work to get there. So I do also support the work that Senator Stabenow is doing. Anything that we can do to get more people on healthcare without digging into their pocket is a step in the right direction, and I will fight all the way to single payer. It's something we can do, whether it starts state and goes federal or otherwise. I know of 2 major hospitals in the 6th District. 2 is not enough. 2 is not enough because they control all the prices that way. It's like having only 2 gas stations. You'd be paying $10 a gallon every single day. We need to make sure that doctors are affordable and accessible, and part of that means we need to create better working conditions for them. The long hours that they have to go through just to treat us leads to more mistakes, leads to us coming back to the hospitals. It means that we don't have an influx of medical staff to take care of us. We can follow models for the opioid crisis from other countries that have been successful, such as Switzerland, and we can increase funding for research for illnesses predominantly impacting folks in the lower socioeconomic status. There's a group called Justice for Otsego that I encourage you to take a look at. Many folks in rural areas where large agricultural companies such as Monsanto and Wolverine and Nestle have been sucking water, there's fracking happening right here in Cass County. It's causing us illness and we need to investigate why. Thank you.
Aida?
Okay, so you know that I'm a veteran, and I do want to do something about the VA healthcare specifically, but also in how it can help be the model for medical coverage for all. One of the things that they do is they group their prescription purchases. Now, I don't know how many of you have to take medication, but once in your life you're going to have to take medication, and sometimes the pharmacist will charge you more because you have insurance, and they won't tell you that you can buy it cheaper if you just pay cash for it. So we need to, number one, change little things like that. Let's change the law and make them have to tell you, well, if you want to pay by cash, it's gonna be $7, but if I use your insurance, it's gonna be $141. So let's do that. Also, I've heard a lot of foreign countries and foreign employees resist coming to the United States because we have no national health care system. The employers don't want to have to pay out of their pocket to have to pay for their employees, and the employees don't like the fact that they have to pay out of their pocket to supplement it. So we're also that causes a lot of a brain drain that we don't even get to have that brain because they're not coming here.
Your time is out.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Have a good day.
All right, our next question. And we'll go to David, will start this off. What is the biggest environmental challenge to the 6th District, and what do you see as a possible solution?
The biggest environmental problem for anyone everywhere is obviously climate change. And to me, this is really a very personal thing in how this is happening. I lived in New Orleans when the BP oil rig exploded, covering the Gulf Coast, killing 11 people, destroying the ecosystem and the economy. And then I moved to Kalamazoo. The BP oil spill was the largest offshore oil spill in U.S. history. Moved to Kalamazoo and found that I'm just down the road from the largest inland oil spill in U.S. history. The joke is, don't move to my neighborhood. But the reality is that BP and Enbridge, neither one of them have been forced to change their practices. And the reason for that is because we have an addiction to fossil fuels in this country. And if we don't break that addiction, our economy is going to spiral. We're going to continue to create pollution. We're going to continue to destroy the climate system that the entire world depends upon. This is the future of human civilization. And if we do something about it, we kick the fossil fuel addiction, we're going to create more jobs. The same investment in fossil fuels versus the same investment in renewables creates 6-to-1 jobs in favor for the renewable energy. Let's put that investment where it matters. Let's create jobs and let's clean up our district. We can do it. This is an easy solution. This isn't really that complicated. It's just big.
Rich?
I think the biggest environmental issue for everyone, anywhere, is, of course, global climate destabilization. It's real, it's caused by human activity, and it's already been the major disaster, cause of major disasters all over the world. And that impact has an impact on us, because it means that we end up fighting more wars because of the human migrations. That means that we have people that are coming here because they have to live somewhere. So there's no doubt that global climate destabilization, even if it only has a minor effect directly on here, is going to have the biggest impact on our lives. Beyond that, I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that every time that the Trump administration tries to zero out the budget for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, the thing that's most on the chopping block is the protection for watersheds, which obviously directly impacts us all. And the final thing I just want to point out, Line 5, it's way up there, but go on the internet and look at the models, because those currents are wicked. My wife and I went up for the pipeline demonstration last Labor Day, because we think it's really important that we stop and shut down Line 5, because it's going to destroy the tourist industry here in Michigan.
George?
There's a lot of agreement among all of us on this, and obviously climate change is the most significant thing facing the world. We're talking about our existence. But I agree with Rich too, as far as Line 5. It is a pending environmental disaster, but we need to talk to people in this district to explain it is a pending economic disaster. And part of messaging to independents and those moderate Republicans is the tourism industry will be devastated, okay? Most importantly is the environment, but you have to also realize it's an economic issue. That line 5 needs to be closed, period, okay? The other issue is navigable waters under the Clean Water Act. The Trump administration is defining the navigable waters that the EPA can protect so narrowly as to prevent all the runoff and different things that are now being allowed into our water, into our streams. We have to go back to some congressional oversight. We have to define correctly what navigable waters are so the EPA can and all the surrounding area.
All? Yeah, we need to close line 5. And yeah, we need to protect our national parks in this country. But I'm one of the founders of the Climate Change Working Group at Western Michigan University, and the science on this has gotten a lot scarier just in the last 5 years. 5 years ago, they were saying maybe we'd have a meter of sea level rise by the end of this century. Well, now they're saying 2.5 meters. And that's a difference between, some studies say, between 200 million refugees and internally displaced people and 1 billion refugees and internally displaced people. So right now there are 60 million refugees and internally displaced people around the world. We're looking at going to 200 million by 2050, just on the trajectory that we're on right now. We have to get our carbon pollution in the United States down from about 19 tons per person per year to about 2 tons per person per year by 2050. One way is with a carbon tax. That might have worked in 1997 when we had the Kyoto Agreement. But beyond that, we need to be proactively moving towards sustainable energy. Yes, there will be better jobs. Yes, it will be better for our local economy. Yes, it will be. Fred Upton, he was called Congress's #1 enemy of planet Earth because he was the most powerful climate science denier in the House for 6 years. And now he's a climate peacock pretending. We can talk about that later.
Well, of course, I agree with my fellow candidates that the #1 issue facing our entire world, and we all call it different things, I call it rapid human-induced climate change. But specifically for the 6th district, something that we can focus on in our own little pocket, I think ultimately oil is our biggest challenge, and we see it coming from Enbridge Pipeline 5, we see it coming from the spill in the Kalamazoo River. But as I mentioned earlier, even in Cass County and across the 6th district, we have fracking happening right now in our own backyard. As a chemist myself, I can tell you that all of us scientists that are not funded by big oil corporations will tell you the science behind fracking is shady at best. We do not understand the full consequences of it, and it is rapidly changing faster than the research can keep up with it to get a bigger bang for the buck for the folks behind the drills. We don't know all the effects of the side reactions that happen, whether in the earth or whether in the waste that is expelled and put back into our drain fields. That affects our farming, that affects our health, and it could affect our entire area of living. We don't know. We've experienced earthquakes here in Michigan, and they've become more rapid and more frequent. We don't know the root cause, but until we can investigate fracking and go against these large corporations, which is a huge challenge, we won't be able to pinpoint it for sure. And that affects all of us, that affects our Great Lakes, but it's very local to the 6th district and something we can change at a federal level.
Aida?
I think for everyone, not just in the 6th district, but Michigan, the whole state, our greatest resources is that we have the largest freshwater in the entire world. Our pocket, the lakes that surround us are the most precious thing on the face of the earth right now. It's the largest pocket of fresh water. And if we don't restore the EPA regulations that are being rolled back daily, that are being rolled back in the dead of night, that are taking our money from being able to clean them up, from being able to preserve them, and if we allow companies like Nestle to take hundreds of thousands of gallons of water and pay us $300 a year to the state of Michigan, something is wrong with that. I know that's not a federal issue, but that just makes me really upset that a corporation can do that, and I think that's something that we can do on a federal level. is make those policies that make it impossible for companies to come into any state and take what is rightfully belong to the citizens of that state without, so far as, having a vote by the whole state. It's one little county, so that's all they had people. I didn't know what was going on until it was too late. And that's something that I'm gonna change. Because whether I win or not, I'm still gonna keep doing this. And I hope that you guys have the fortitude, as hopefully we all will, to continue this fight, because it's gonna be a long one.
Matt?
As everyone said, clearly climate change is the biggest environmental challenge facing us. And one of the solutions is to defeat Fred Upton in November. His flip-flop, where his record and his rhetoric have diverged so sharply, calls into question exactly what he's thinking when he allows the Trump agenda to move forward. Like Rich said, we have to be practicing evidence-based policy, not sticking our head in the sand and denying climate change by letting the Paris Accords, by getting out of the Paris Accords, etc. In addition to other things that people said, I think the Citizens Climate Lobby has put forward some important ideas to incentivize and disincentivize carbon usage in our economy. I think that, of course, we need to shut Line 5. One of the interesting things that we need to do in shutting down Line 5 is we have to make sure that we build coalitions big enough to include our brethren and sisters in the labor movement. Where I hear the most resistance to closing down Line 5 right now is amongst those in labor who are wondering where the economy will go if those jobs that are connected to that pipeline go away. We just need to make that argument. The last thing, we need to fight for and increase CAFE standards, move away from the petrol-based economy, as I said. I also want to, as a scientist, make sure that we're fully funding the EPA. We don't let anybody hide their reports. We need transparency from the EPA. And many will know that Fred Upton this year is going to be the one working to put the EPA under the Department of Energy. We need to resist him all the way on that, all the way through November and beyond.
Thank you, candidates. Take a deep breath. Thanks for being a good audience, too. It's very quiet in here. Everybody's listening, very intent. Very good. All right, question 4. What changes would you support to continue Social Security being made solvent in the future? Get ready again? You okay? All right, Rich is ready.
All right, well, first of all, I just want to make sure that everybody is aware, and I think most of the people in this room are, that Social Security is the greatest anti-poverty program ever devised by man. And we cannot risk it going away or being killed by the GOP, Paul Ryan in particular. So the first thing we need to do is remove the cap on the amount of money you can earn before you have to, when you can stop paying Social Security. So we just remove the cap. That actually takes care of 3/4 of the solvency problem. So then you still have a quarter left. Well, there's a lot of stuff going on about we got to stop immigration and so forth. Actually, we need more immigrants working to support Social Security to keep that going. So instead of fighting immigration, we should be welcoming immigration. And just to be clear, when I say immigration, I'm not talking about high-level expertise immigrants. I'm talking about bringing in families just like we always have, our welcoming tradition. If we're trying to bring in people who are experts, we ought to be looking in the mirror and asking ourselves, why on earth do we need to bring in people from outside of our country with the expertise? They should be being developed here by our educational system.
George.
Okay, let's get one thing straight. Medicare, Social Security, Medicaid, they are not entitlements. You pay for them, you own them. It's a contract between you and the government needs to respond accordingly. I'm not for changing anything for anybody in the system now, because that's a breach of contract. I think I'm the only lawyer running here, and I know a contract when I see one, and I know what a breach is. And breaking the relationship between the person in Social Security and the people eligible and those in the program is not going to happen if I'm around and have anything to say about it. I think they can be solvent. I think there is a lot of phony bookkeeping going on. I think there's enough people coming through the system to take care of it. And I go back to our budget priorities. Remember years ago they talked about a lockbox? There is no lockbox in the budget. If you can save $125 billion in the Defense Department budget, there's no reason in the world you can't use that money to shore up Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, period.
Paul? Yeah, we need to defend Social Security and keep it going with the rate of inflation. And there are many seniors in our district who are struggling even with Social Security to cover the basic costs of food and housing. And so for people who are still below poverty on Social Security, we need to increase it for them. And the way to do that is to get rid of that cap so it's fair. So you keep on paying it even if you're, if you're for the higher wages. That's the way to address that problem. And yes, health care, housing for seniors, food for seniors. These are all issues that many people in our district, in the richest country in the world, still struggle with. And the federal government has been, Paul Ryan wants to cut Social Security. Fred Upton has already voted to cut the food assistance programs. This has just got to be, care for our seniors has got to be a fundamental part of who we are as a people, of our basic values. Since I have 30 seconds, I want to also say that I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I was a math teacher in the Gambia. I'm a professor at Western Michigan University. My wife is from Ireland. We have 2 lovely daughters who went to Kalamazoo Public Schools. And I'm saying these things because you should get to know your congressman. Thank you. Ebony?
Get to know your congressperson, wink wink. So, I'm actually the only candidate up here who's an active member of the Democratic Socialists of America, so I know the value in our social welfare programs like Social Security, and I'm not afraid to say it. Budget is a choice. We talked about that a little bit, but if we can add $1 trillion to our national debt, we can make sure that that money is going into social welfare programs, just like Social Security. Our federal government cannot go bankrupt. It is physically impossible for it to go bankrupt. So every time that we say we don't have the money for this program, it is a moral and ethical choice being made by the people in Congress. That's why one of the changes I would like to see, and something I would definitely propose, is that we let our Congress people know that the deficit to our social welfare programs, such as Social Security, will be coming out of their paychecks. That's one way to hold them, hopefully us, accountable. I'm part of the generation that since day one that I started working at 18 years old or whatever, I've been worried. I'm paying into Social Security. All my friends tell me we're never going to see this. We're just throwing money away. It's up to us to make sure that that's not the truth and that's not happening. 2/3 of the neighborhood that I live in live below the poverty line. I was talking to a woman in my neighborhood yesterday who relies on Social Security. She's slowly going blind. She wanted to chat for about 20 minutes to just tell me about all of her health issues, and it took 20 minutes to tell me all of them. And Social Security is not covering even half of that. It's unacceptable. Thank you.
Aida?
Rich said that I don't call them entitlements. I never call them entitlements. It's an earned benefit. You've earned it. George?
George.
We look alike.
Okay, number one, why don't we just roll back those corporate tax cuts? Those are so unnecessary. The corporations right now are sitting on the largest cash reserves in the history of the world. And yet we're gonna give them a tax break. We need to crawl that back and put it into the Social Security fund. Refund it. They have already rated it twice in my lifetime, and they never paid it back. Maybe we should get that back from the corporations that are now taking our money again. And for Social Security, Medicare, all that, a lot of people are also on food stamps. We have cut food stamps way too much. Right now, it's $1.40 per person per meal per day. That's, if you think you can live on $1.40 per meal per day, I hope you try it, just as an experiment to yourself. It's hard out here, okay? I'm not just speaking to myself, I'm speaking for my prior self, the person that, that did have to have help in my lifetime before. So, thank you for your time. Sorry about that.
Matt?
Yeah, a lot of what I would say has been said. We must protect the Social Security benefits and also recognize the interrelation between Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food assistance programs, and other safety net programs that seniors need, older adults need, and deserve, have earned over their lifetimes. Just to unpack this term, the cap, a little bit, in case people haven't kind of looked into this. What it means is if you earn more than $127,000 a year, once you've earned that $127,000, you know every paycheck after that, you don't pay Social Security tax. That's 6.2% tax out of your paycheck. So anybody here who, or around the country, who earns more than $127,000 isn't pulling their fair weight in the Social Security plan that we have. I'm talking about athletes and billionaires and hedge funds, managers. There's no reason why people who are on the upper end of the spectrum of the economic can't pay their fair share all the way through to support this system and make sure it's solvent. I agree with Rich that immigration policy is a big part of this as well. And as someone who's been on WIC with family members who have needed the food assistance program, older members of my family as well, I think that that's also an important part of this conversation. We have to recognize it's not just Social Security Administration where we have the contract with seniors. It's a variety of programs. We need to make sure that people have dignity and independence throughout their lives.
David?
Social Security is actually one of the specific reasons why I'm running for Congress. When I was on the platform committee as a representative for the Sanders campaign, scrapping the cap, as we called it, and indexing Social Security benefits to the cost of inflation were two of the key things that we were trying to get into the amended Democratic National Platform. We weren't able to get those in there. Exactly. How can you call yourself a Democrat if you're not going to fight to the very bitter end for Social Security? That, to me, was one of the main reasons why I had to run. And when I look at this, what I'm left with is why have we lost over 1,000 seats across the country for the Democratic Party in the last decade? It's because we haven't been putting forward a bold vision of the future. If we want to win going forward, we have to say these are the things that we stand for. These are the things that Democrats are going to do for you. And if we don't do that, we will lose more seats. We'll lose another 1,000 seats in the next decade. And we cannot afford to let that happen. Social Security is the tip of the spear. Let's make sure we protect this and promise the future that we're going to do that for them.
From all the town halls, meet and greets, and other appearances, what is the biggest problem with the lack of equal opportunities for women, minorities, LGBTQ community, and seniors that you have heard from your future constituents?
And again? Ready to start? Yeah. All right, go ahead. George, I'm sorry.
This is Rich. I'm George. I'm the casual guy. He got the coat.
Actually, one that affects all those groups you talked about came in Berrien County. And Annie and I went to hear the superintendents of school at a panel discussion. And I will never forget this because it had such an impact on me. They talked about one of their big problems. We know there's funding, we know there's facilities, we can go down the litany of things that we all know. But the one thing that really struck me was how we have stigmatized the profession of education. And it is no longer given the dignity and respect that it deserves. And it has made their job extremely difficult because they can't recruit young people into the profession. They can't keep people in the profession. And it affects all those people you were just talking about, because at the heart of all these issues is education. Ignorance is the fuel for the problems we have in almost every segment of society. And the way we're going to resolve them is to educate our way out. And the way we're going to do that is restore dignity, respect, and compensation to the profession of being an educator.
Paul? Yeah, our Declaration of Independence says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all should have been people are created equal, and as a country we're failing, and we're going backwards in so many areas, whether it's race or gender or attacks on LGBT rights now. In terms of where I've been, from my experiences, I've been holding a number of Let Your Voice Be Heard occasions where I'm hearing from different constituencies, for example, with the African American community. And yes, education is a very big deal, but another bigger deal that what I've been hearing is the unfairness of our criminal justice system. Whether we're talking about who it is that is picked up, or what length of sentence that you get, or then how long you stay in jail. And as I was saying before, this is both, I mean, race has been the real issue for the United States since slavery, since day one. And we're still struggling with it. And I think the area we're struggling with, where we need to address it most immediately is with our criminal justice system. And I've talked about moving 1 million people from behind bars back into the community by dealing with substance abuse, mental health as public health issues, not in the criminal justice system, by ending these free strikes and your outlaws, by ending the school to prison pipeline. I can talk about that one if we have time. And then it's also, I agree with George, that bringing our education system into the 21st century will also be helpful in address the fundamental issues that we face as a country.
Ebony?
So my answer might be a little swayed, partially from personal experiences as one of those demographics. I'm sure Aida will have a similar story. But I've also been specifically targeting lower socioeconomic areas of the 6th district, because that's typically where we find non-voters, and those are the folks that we need to come out in huge waves in order to really win this seat. So there's overarching issues, obviously, that include, but are not limited to, there's a lack of protections for all of the groups listed in the question. And a lot of us are subdivided into these demographics, but the majority of us are united as members of the working class. And we need to strengthen our protections there, especially to protect all of us. There's also a lack of intersectionality in a lot of our policies and issues being made. But specifically here in the 6th district, the issue I've heard the most from all of these target demographics has been the lack of affordable housing, which has led to all the homeless folks that we have in the area. Whether you're in Kalamazoo, you're in Three Rivers, you're in Niles. Housing is hard to come by, and especially if you're part of a minority group, be it a woman, be it LGBTQ+, be it any kind of ethnicity that's not white. It's hard to come by, and it's even harder to keep. Rentals are through the roof. Landlords are selling left and right to try to make an extra buck, and slumlord is becoming the new landlord. It's just not a way to treat our folks, including our seniors. Thank you.
Aida?
Wages are the great equalizer. Number one, as a Hispanic woman, I'm going to tell you, I am not a rapist and I am not a murderer. Okay? This is how I was introduced to this activism for the past year and how I ended up here. I was truly insulted. So I just wanted to say that. This is why I'm here. I stand up for people like myself, people that basically came from nothing. I'm still basically there. But I wanted a seat at the table. I didn't want to be part of the meal. So wages are the great equalizer. I'm just going to talk about the difference between men and women, but also the difference between women and other women. Let's say man gets $1, white woman 78 cents. African American woman, 67 cents. Hispanic woman, 52 cents. I know these numbers because I've been looking at these numbers for the past year, and I'm sure all of us have struggled and gotten more educated about what's going on. But we need to have wage equality across the board. It's the only way that all of us are going to succeed. And as far as the housing starts are gone, this past month, housing starts in this district have lessened by 7%. That means, guess what? The rent's going to get even higher, and what's that going to be? Even more homeless people. We need to stop this right now. Thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, you've heard Effie and I both talk about housing tonight. You heard George talk about education. You heard I talk about discrimination in the workforce. I think it was Paul talked about criminal justice system. All of our systems are contributing to inequities. That's what institutional racism and institutional discrimination looks like. Is that what box you check when you apply for a job limits your opportunities, or what bus stop is closest to you or the grocery store limits your opportunities for healthy produce selection, for example, right? You can't live your healthiest possible life in a system, in a community, in a society where institutional stigmatization is so prevalent. That's what I've been fighting against for 20 years, when fighting for gun control, when fighting for gun injury prevention, when fighting for public health services that affect everyone in the country. What I've learned is that you can't just have the best possible policies and scale them across the country. You can't just do that. You have to, from the beginning, over-invest to make sure that by design your policies are going to overserve the underserved. You can't just have the best policies out there. You have to make sure that they're equally accessible no matter the resources that people have. So the approach to solving these areas of discrimination is to design by principle, by value, overserving the underserved and closing the equity loopholes.
David? From all the town halls, meet and greets, and other appearances, what is the biggest problem with the lack of equal opportunities for women, minorities, LGBTQ community, and seniors that you have heard from your future constituents? On it again? Ready to start? Yeah. All right, go ahead. George, that's Rich. I'm sorry.
This is Rich.
You know the line.
I'm George. I'm the casual guy, he got the coat. Actually, one that affects all those groups you talked about came in Berrien County. And Annie and I went to hear the superintendents of school at a panel discussion. And I will never forget this because it had such an impact on me. They talked about one of their big problems. We know there's funding, we know there's facilities, we could go down the litany of things that we all know. But the one thing that really struck me was how we have stigmatized the profession of education. And it is no longer given the dignity and respect that it deserves. And it has made their job extremely difficult because they can't recruit young people into the profession. They can't keep people in the profession. And it affects all those people you were just talking about, because at the heart of all these issues is education. Ignorance is the fuel for the problems we have in almost every segment of society. And the way we're going to resolve them is to educate our way out. And the way we're going to do that is restore dignity, respect, and compensation to the profession of being an educator.
Paul?
Yeah, our Declaration of Independence says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all should have been people are created equal, and as a country we're failing and we're going backwards in so many areas, whether it's race or gender or attacks on LGBT rights now. In terms of where I've been, from my experiences, I've been holding a number of Let Your Voice Be Heard occasions where I'm hearing from different constituencies, for example, with the African American community. And yes, education is a very big deal, but another bigger deal that what I've been hearing is the unfairness of our criminal justice system. Whether we're talking about who it is that is picked up, or what length of sentence that you get, or then how long you stay in jail. And as I was saying before, this is both, I mean, race has been the real issue for the United States since slavery, since day one. And we're still struggling with it. And I think the area we're struggling with, where we need to address it most immediately is with our criminal justice system. And I've talked about moving 1 million people from behind bars back into the community by dealing with substance abuse, mental health as public health issues, not in the criminal justice system, by ending these free strikes and your outlaws, by ending the school to prison pipeline. I can talk about that one if we have time. And then it's also, I agree with George, that bringing our education system into the 21st century will also be helpful in addressing the fundamental issues that we face as a country.
Ebony?
So my answer might be a little swayed, partially from personal experiences as one of those demographics. I'm sure Aida will have a similar story. But I've also been specifically targeting lower socioeconomic areas of the 6th district because that's typically where we find non-voters, and those are the folks that we need to come out in huge waves in order to really win this seat. So there's overarching issues, obviously, that include, but are not limited to, there's a lack of protections for all of the groups listed in the question. And a lot of us are subdivided into these demographics, but the majority of us are united as members of the working class. And we need to strengthen our protections there, especially to protect all of us. There's also a lack of intersectionality in a lot of our policies and issues being made. But specifically here in the 6th district, the issue I've heard the most from all of these target demographics has been the lack of affordable housing, which has led to all the homeless folks that we have in the area. Whether you're in Kalamazoo, you're in Three Rivers, you're in Niles, housing is hard to come by, and especially if you're part of a minority group, be it a woman, be it LGBTQ+, be it any kind of ethnicity that's not white. It's hard to come by, and it's even harder to keep. Rentals are through the roof, landlords are selling left and right to try to make an extra buck, and slumlord is becoming the new landlord. It's just not a way to treat our folks, including our seniors. Thank you.
Aida?
Wages are the great equalizer. Number one, as a Hispanic woman, I'm going to tell you, I am not a rapist and I am not a murderer. Okay? This is how I was introduced to this activism for the past year and how I ended up here. I was truly insulted. So I just wanted to say that. This is why I'm here. I stand up for people like myself, people that basically came from nothing. I'm still basically there. But I wanted a seat at the table. I didn't want to be part of the meal. So wages are the great equalizer. I'm just going to talk about the difference between men and women, but also the difference between women and other women. Let's say man gets $1, white woman 78 cents. African American woman, 67 cents. Hispanic woman, 52 cents. I know these numbers because I've been looking at these numbers for the past year, and I'm sure all of us have struggled and gotten more educated about what's going on. But we need to have wage equality across the board. It's the only way that all of us are going to succeed. And as far as the housing starts are gone, this past month, housing starts in this district have lessened by 7%. That means, guess what? The rent's going to get even higher, and what's that going to be? Even more homeless people. We need to stop this right now. Thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, you've heard Effie and I both talked about housing tonight. You heard George talk about education. You heard Aida talk about discrimination in the workforce. I think it was Paul talked about criminal justice system. All of our systems are contributing to inequities. That's what institutional racism and institutional discrimination looks like. Is that what box you check when you apply for a job limits your opportunities, or what bus stop is closest to you or the grocery store limits your opportunities for healthy produce selection, for example, right? You can't live your healthiest possible life in a system, in a community, in a society where institutional stigmatization is so prevalent. That's what I've been fighting against for 20 years, when fighting for gun control, when fighting for gun injury prevention, when fighting for public health services that affect everyone in the country. What I've learned is that you can't just have the best possible policies and scale them across the country. You can't just do that. You have to, from the beginning, over-invest to make sure that by design your policies are going to overserve the underserved. You can't just have the best policies out there. You have to make sure that they're equally accessible no matter the resources that people have. So the approach to solving these areas of discrimination is to design by principle, by value, overserving the underserved and closing the equity loopholes.
David?